Okay, so we're here at the finals for this season's ZRL. After the two semi-finals, the TTT and the scratch race on Rolling Highlands, there was a new and quite interesting format in store for us on Glasgow Crit Circuit for this Cup Finals round. My Wahoo Call team had made it into I believe it's called the actual Cup Final division, or the Cup division. I think where there was a cup and a plate, because we finished sort of towards the upper end of our semi-finals division. And it was a sort of a slightly different format, where we were looking to take on two short races, both on the Glasgow Crit Circuit, but the first race, part one, was in the standard direction, and race two was in the reverse direction. Now, unlike what we've had previously on rounds that have gone through Glasgow, we're not actually going for all segments. I mean, thankfully, because that would be, I think, 20-something segments if we were going for all the sprint and the climb for both part one and part two. So actually, you can see here we've gone through that start sprint. In previous races, that's been the first segment straight out of the pen. For this Cup Finals round, we're actually only going for segments on laps 2 and laps 4, and that'll be the champion sprint and the Clyde kicker. And for both of those, there was one set of fastest through points available, and there was sort of two separate sets then on each segment of your first across the line points. So really, the only sprint efforts were due to be lap 2 and then on lap 4, before, of course, the finishing sprint. Okay, so I've cut out the remainder of lap 1 there. The group kept it nice and steady. There are a couple of riders actually that have gone off the front here, but you know, it would take a real big effort to actually keep away from a surging group when we hit the climb. Overall, the group kept it pretty steady and wanted to hold it together. I think knowing that we had these specific laps, or this specific lap, where there was going to be those two efforts pretty close together. There's only around, I think it's pretty just over a minute from when you finish the Clyde kicker to actually then hitting the champion sprint. I had picked up an aero, which I decided to keep. I picked it up in the first lap. Even though it's on a climb, the speeds are quite high. So I think perhaps the benefit of holding on to an aero helmet might actually be there. For myself, I probably am stronger on the sprint segment, but it is important to actually put out the effort here in order to stay towards the front of the group, because splits can quite easily happen. So I just made sure I did enough effort. I wasn't going 100%, I wasn't going all in to try and really take points here. My kind of aim was to give it enough of an effort to not be under threat of actually getting tailed, and then if possible kind of kick a little bit harder towards the end. So I think I came across the line in 5th position there, and initially it did flash up with one of the fastest through times, but that was very quickly then bumped down that table. So I picked up 5th position for some first across the line points, which will be added to the team's total. But my main job was now to back right off the power, really ease up, try and get as much recovery as I can before hitting this champion sprint for the first time that it's going to be scoring points. Now my plan was to come from slightly further back in the group and do a much longer effort with the hope of picking up some fastest through points. I mean, the fastest through points are more heavily weighted than first across the line. So if you think the first rider across the line, so the person who actually say wins the sprint, they pick up 10 points. The person who gets the fastest through time, okay, so they can finish well down and actually use the group to get some speed, they'll pick up 20 points. So that's obviously more valuable than going for the first across the line. So what I'm looking to do here, I was lucky I picked up another aero power up, but I'm actually sitting kind of towards the back of this pack. So I've just kind of eased off the power a little bit, so I'm sitting a lot further back, and I've got a long line of riders there, you can see, to actually be able to sprint through. So just before we hit the sprint segment, hit my aero, and kind of go literally from front to back through this group. It's quite a long effort actually, coming through the group here. But just come through there and it flashes up fastest through time. So that was, from everyone who came through, that was the fastest time through that segment. So that was really the kind of the aim achieved. As it happened, later on in the race, somebody did manage to go through that segment quicker on lap 4, but it still maintained. That was still the second fastest throughout the entire race. So picked up some really good points, and obviously I didn't get any first across the line. If you time that really well, you can come through the group and then manage to get some first across the lines as well. That group was really stretched out going into that sprint, and I did start it quite far back. So had I started it a little bit further forward, maybe I could have picked up some first across the line, but the main target was achieved there. Okay, so cut out lap 3. So there were some breakaway attempts. One of our team did a great job of actually chasing it back, and we here on lap 4 about to hit the Clyde kicker for those points again. I've got a feather this time, the feather power up, which obviously it decreases your weight slightly when you use it. It now lasts for 30 seconds. So it's something you can actually activate right at the bottom of this climb, and it'll keep going throughout the thing. So my target mainly was probably the sprint after, but I did try and give it a little bit of an effort again, just to don't want to be the wrong side of any splits, and then just late give it a little bit of a surge to see if I can pick up any points. But I wasn't able to. As you can see from the cam there, it was really hurting. Really, I started this race and my legs were not where I'd want them to be. I did a number of hours riding on the weekend, I think, and it's just kind of, they were just a little bit dead. It's feeling a bit fatigued, and I didn't have it to go any harder there. Didn't pick up any fastest through, didn't pick up any first across the line, but I did end up putting in a bit of an effort, which is definitely, I was a bit concerned it was really going to compromise this sprint that's soon to come up. It did mean, of course, that I did stay the right side of some splits. If you actually look at the mini map there, the group is really strung out and it is splitting. So the one positive, I suppose, of having put in that effort is that I can really back off here and try and sit in the group, and just recover as much as I can. Luckily, picked up an aero helmet again, which is really useful for the sprint. There's a couple of riders that have gone long here, and as that sort of group swarmed me, I was really struggling to hold on. I didn't really have that ability to recover today, it seemed. Just those legs were a bit dead, and I was concerned, to be honest, that I was going to really struggle here. A lot of riders, as you can see, there's that little bit of a climb here, just sort of maybe 600 meters from the sprint finish, and a lot of riders have kind of gone hard. At this point I was almost caught in a bit of a no man's land. There's a little group of riders ahead of me that I didn't really want to put the effort into. I kind of wanted to use the group behind, but actually what happens, I make a real error there, because what happens is that little group, they almost form a little mini breakaway. So I've kind of sprinted from the back there a little bit, and I haven't really achieved anything. So there's a group of sort of about 10 riders that had a second or two in the main pack. They just kind of creeped away, and I was on the tail of them up that climb, but I just backed off, believing that the main bulk of the pack was going to come through it, and I'd rather be carried along in the draft of those than put out the effort kind of following the wheel in front. That absolutely was a mistake. I should have gone with them, because whilst I was struggling, I could have gone with them. I could have almost used my sprint to make sure I was on the tail of them, because the bulk of the pack never actually caught. So all those riders who were in that little small split, took all the first across the line points there. So again, for myself, lap 4, another 2 segments that I haven't really done all that well on. And it was now a case of trying to get the most recovery that we could, and then take on that final sprint. Okay, so we went up the climb. The group took it fairly easily. Unfortunately, I picked up a feather, so not the type of power-up that's particularly useful in the sprint finish. A couple of riders did attempt to go long on that descent. I was feeling quite gassed, I have to be honest. And I was just going to try and do the best that I could to sit in this group. The actual finishing position points were a bit interesting in this race, because it wasn't on your actual finishing position. There was a GC time that was going to be combined from this race and the upcoming race to actually give you an overall finishing position. So actually kind of taking the win or being in the top few riders was of less importance. You just wanted to remain in the bulk of that pack. But the group goes quite long on that climb, and I try my best to kind of sprint through it, but I'm really gassed. I'm really blown. And just as we kind of head towards the finish line here, I kind of almost made the conscious decision to back off a little bit. There were no big gaps, so I wasn't going to lose a great deal of time that would have any kind of impact on that GC type finish. So I felt that with another race coming, it might be more beneficial to actually try and save a little bit of energy. And I really didn't have it to contest the finish there. So I backed off, keeping in mind we had another race, and it was now a case, we had about 8 minutes before the start of the next race. So it was now a case of getting the most amount of recovery that I could before the next race starts. Okay, so on to race 2. So there were only points for first across the line on lap 2 and lap 4. And they were only on the Clyde Kicker, the KOM. The group went out really quite hard in this race. As you can see, the pack is really strung out. And I was saying to my teammates on over Discord, I was really struggling to hold on. I didn't think I had the legs to almost unable to hold on to the group, let alone actually compete at the segment. Sort of mercifully, it does back off here. Like I say, the group went out the pen and it stayed at quite a high average power for the early part. Thankfully, it did back off here. So I was literally trying to do the least amount of work that I could and get a bit of recovery before we hit this climb. In the reverse direction, I think the best way to describe this Glasgow crit circuit for those who haven't raced it is it's almost like Crit City in the downtown Dolphin direction, but kind of beefed up a bit. The climb here, this isn't actually the start of the Clyde Kicker, but this is the steepest part of the climb. It's that little descent that a few riders attacked on the first time round in the other direction, actually sort of attacked on the way to the finish line. And the Clyde Kicker doesn't actually start there, but that is one of the steepest parts of the climb. There's the line there for the start of the actual KOM. So it's 600 metres long, and it says 0.7%. But what it actually is a series of ups and downs. Now I've got a draft van, so I try to sort of stay a little bit further, or I'm aware that I can stay a little bit further back in this group, because there's a slight descent here around the corner. There's another little kicker, a slight descent on the corner that I was planning on using the draft van on, kicking a little bit harder, and then trying to come through the draft of a few of the riders here as we got up towards the line. I didn't think I'd be able to compete here. I was really hurting, heart rate up in the 190s. But kind of to my surprise, when I kicked, I came through a lot of riders, and I actually crossed the line there in fourth position. Picking up some decent points actually for the team. That took me a little bit by surprise. That with the effort hurt. The effort really hurt. But I mean, you can see from the kind of the state of me on the cam there, that effort really took it out of me. But I was kind of surprised that I managed to kind of make up that number of places from being back in sort of 20th position. So it gave me a little bit of confidence actually that, looking at how strung that pack is there in the mini map, it's really, really strung out. It's about to split actually. But it gave me a little bit of confidence that whilst I was hurting, everyone was, and perhaps I had a little bit more sort of in my legs than previously thought, and maybe I could compete here. So again, we've got lap 3. There's no segment, and then it's on to lap 4 for the next time that we actually hit that climb for some points. Okay, so just entered into lap 4. There's a couple of riders trying a bit of effort off the front here. Like I say, thankfully it didn't go ridiculously hard on lap 3. There's a lot of riders who are clearly very, very gassed, and thankfully they did back off. So my heart rate is still running really quite high there. I mean, it's up in the high 170s, which for me isn't even threshold, but it hasn't really dropped down, which is always a sign that the effort's really starting to take hold. I've got another draft van. So again, I was thinking I'm going to play this very similarly to that sprint the sprint for the climb then on lap 2. Just try and sit in the draft here, put out a bit of an effort on this initial steep kicker, then try and just sit in the draft of the other riders on this more rolling section where it drops downhill, and give it that little bit of a kick on the downhill, and then try and rush the group on that last sort of ramp up to the finish line. But like I say already, it's really hurting, up in the 190s now, the heart rate. But just do what we could, because I felt as if, not just try and score points, I felt as if it was going to be really, really important here to be the right side of any splits. That was almost as important, or if not more important, than scoring points here, was just making sure that that you're the right side when this splits. So I came across the line in there was a little group of us, but I was 5th. So again, managed to pick up a few points. That effort has really strung the group out. There's a lot of gaps. There's a couple of gaps actually pretty much just behind us. So we must be a small group of, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. And there's a couple of little gaps. You can really see at the mini-map there as we round that corner how stretched that is. So it was really important there, not just to score points, but to actually be really far forward, and not get caught out. In order to, I did think that some riders were going to keep pushing it here, and they'd want to try and almost form a bit of a breakaway and stay away. But that didn't happen. So we'll just go forward onto the sprint and see how that. So I've dropped into pretty much just the finish of that climb. It was a bit of an effort to stay there. The group did stretch out here. It wasn't as much of an effort, of course, as what it was when we were going for points. But a couple of riders have gone off the front. I really did not have the legs to follow them. The best I could hope for. I was lucky I did pick up a draft van, which I was planning on using for a long sprint effort. But pretty much all I could do was sit in this pack, try and get as much recovery as I could, and then sort of go with the main sprinting pack. I wasn't able to follow those guys who've kind of created a bit of a breakaway there. At this point, there's 600 metres to go, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, right, nobody has really started kicking in this main pack, we'll call it, and there is those guys up front, and if we don't go now, we're not catching them. So I decided to activate my draft van, and then just try and kick with a sprint from around probably 450, 500 metres, so quite long. It was really going to hurt because of the effort. It was long. I didn't really want to be sprinting that long, but with the draft van, I was hoping that I could actually catch a few of those riders and use a draft of them just to come through. So I do a round the corner there with 100 metres left and just managed to come through that last rider. So I took the part win, then the race win for part 2. It wasn't it wasn't a brilliant sprint, it wasn't superpower or anything, but I managed to time it that I went early enough to actually catch some of those riders who were out front, and it worked really well to actually follow I could catch their draft then after coming out of that pack, which helped get me sort of keep my speed up, and they were a target to kind of aim for then. It was quite a long sprint effort there that was quite painful, after such a hard couple of races. On really poor legs, but they gave me something to kind of target, and almost a carrot to chase. So we finished off in 4th overall, for a really enjoyable ZRL season.